Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sankofa the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. Make sure you are listening to him and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel. Make sure you are reading all of Omari Sankofa II's work on the Detroit Free Press. And make sure you subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack, where you can get all of my game notes and analysis for free over there. Appreciate everybody supporting all of us in all of our endeavors covering this Detroit Pistons basketball team. O2, before we get into the team, it looks like we may get some snow in Kansas Monday morning. Has it yet snowed in Michigan this year?
Yeah, we got some snow last night, actually. We got maybe 2 or 3 inches. And then we got some snow the week before that. I was out of town, so I forget which day. But we've been pretty much in winter for 2 weeks now, and apparently it's supposed to be a pretty bad winter. We don't get snow every winter like we used to back in the good old days. So, an actual winter, I'm not looking forward to because I hate snow. But long story short, yeah, we've got snow. We're probably going to get a lot more snow, and it sounds like it's going to head down your guys' way too.
Wes says they got a foot in Chicago on Friday night.
Wow.
We've already got a big snow there.
Yeah.
I think we're only supposed to get a trace enough for all of my students to be like, why didn't they cancel school? Why are we in school coming off a full week off for Thanksgiving break where they, have been away from school for long enough? But let's talk Detroit Pistons basketball. Appreciate everybody being here for your support. Sorry that we were late. This was 100% my fault. Recording Game Theory with Sam Bassini. Imagine this for those of you that know we went too long and got started a little bit late, which happens a lot, but good episodes over there if you guys want to check it out. Always talking about the Pistons in some capacity throughout most of those episodes, sometimes a lot because they've been so good. But let's start with Detroit's win over the Miami Heat on Saturday. Here's the thing, O2. For a team that is where Detroit is at now, with the expectations that the Pistons have with their start, all of that, I think the way we evaluate them, or at least for me, is different than last year and definitely the years before. I thought they really needed this win. Everybody talked about how soft the schedule was during the winning streak, and then they play the Celtics and the Magic. We'll talk about those 2 games later, and they lose very close ones. I thought they needed this win against Miami, and they really couldn't blow the 20-point lead. They really needed to not do that, but they find a way to get it done. They look good. They dominated most of the game, and it was led by the star, Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, they were up 22, I think, with 8 or 9 minutes left, and then
I thought they were up 88. Didn't your tweet say 88?
I don't know how I mixed up the 8 and the 2 on my keyboard.
They're so close on the keyboard. I mean,
yeah, there's only like 6 numbers in between them, pretty close. But yeah, you're up 22 with like 8 minutes left. You figure the game is in hand, and just because it seems like every Pistons Heat game is destined to have some sort of crazy finish, they get within 2 twice within the final minute, and then you get a clutch layup from Dennis, and then you get the mid-range bucket from Cade. Tobias missed 2 free throws like somewhere in that stretch. Like they
after he hadn't missed all game. Omari, he was unreal all game. I literally typed in my notes, this dude can't miss. Then he misses a corner 3 and 2 free throws.
Yeah, no, he was literally like 10 for 11 or something crazy. Like couldn't miss, and then he misses the corner 3 and 2 free throws. So they tried really hard to give that game up, and they didn't. And over the course of 82 games, you're going to have finishes like that. But, maybe if there's a trend here, it's just that the same thing happened against Indiana, and they almost lost that. And you're having this theme of trying to find lineups that could, capably close games out. I also think there were a lot of revealing rotation outcomes in that game that we'll probably talk about later that I also think helped them close that one out. But it's all said and done. They're 16-4 through 20 games. Obviously, an amazing start. Still the best team in the East. Still, I believe, the second best team in the NBA, behind the Oklahoma City Thunder, who realistically nobody's going to catch them. A lot to not like in that Miami game, but also a lot to like in that game.
So just some other numbers for the season as a whole, and then we will talk about Cade Cunningham. I feel like it's important for us to lead with him because a lot of times, and this is usually my fault, we talk about Dennis Jenkins and get off on that, or Isaiah Stewart or Paul Reed, rightfully so, but we bury it with Cade, and we're not going to do that on this episode. But right now, they are sixth in the NBA. Well, let's start with the record. They are second in the NBA at 16-4 behind only the Thunder. They are sixth in net rating, plus 5.8. Offensive rating, this is the surprising number to me, Omari. They've actually moved up to ninth in offensive rating at 117.1. And then they have dropped a little bit in defensive rating to sixth. But I will point out the difference from where they're at to number two is only one. Like literally the Rockets are 110.3 and the Pistons are 111.3. You want to guess how much higher the Oklahoma City Thunder are than the Rockets? Like this number is amazing to me.
And I mean, it's at least 10 points, right?
So it's 7. But
it's 7. Okay.
It's 7 from OKC to Houston from 1 to 2 to go 7 points from Rockets. And this isn't points per game. This is defensive rating. I just say points. But the Rockets from their 110 to the team at 117 is 23rd ranked Chicago Bulls. So the difference from 1 to 2 in defensive rating is the same as number 2 to number 23, which is just crazy. Okay, enough Oklahoma City Thunder talk. Cade Cunningham over his last 3 games, 37 points on 51% from the field, 43% on 7 3-point attempts, 79% from the line on almost 10 free throw attempts, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. He has seen the turnovers tick up, but specifically in this Miami Heat game, we saw him minus the turnovers late in the game do his thing. This dude's playing at a legit all-NBA level. I think we're doing awards over on Game Theory on Thursday. I assume we're going to have a conversation on whether he's the 5th first-team All-NBA guy or not. I think there's 4 locks for first-team All-NBA, and I think, again, right now, Cade is at least in the conversation for the 5th guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's just been on a crazy tear, and really, it's been all season. He's been the best fourth-quarter scorer in the NBA. We saw bits of that again last night in Miami, but he's doing everything. I mean, he's carrying the playmaking load. He's essentially getting whatever shot he wants at will, and his efficiency being pretty good, even though the threes still haven't really fallen at a high clip, just speaks to just how much damage he's doing to teams inside and then from mid range as well. The rebounding is has still been strong relative to the fact that he starts with Duran and Asar, who obviously are going to gobble up a lot of them. Even had a clutch defensive play to help close out that game against Miami last night. I forget he knocked the ball out of Norm Powell's hands right after he hit that mid-range jumper. He had 5 fouls and he just went for it and got it. I mean, he's doing it on both ends. He's been absurdly productive. He's putting up amazing numbers, and I think part of the reason why their offensive rating has gone up is just because Cade's playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah, so I was just looking at some numbers here. His free throw rate is up 10% compared to last season, which last season was the best mark of his young career. So he's getting to the free throw line a lot more. That 3-point percentage starts to slowly tick up to where it was last year. And, you're looking at a guy that's scoring almost 30 points a game. His season numbers right now, Omari, are 29, 6.5, 9.5. He averages over a steal per game. Now, we've seen some, in the armor with the late game stuff. He missed the free throw in the
Boston
game. And then he had 2 or 3 turnovers in the late portion of this game against Miami where Davion Mitchell took from him. But at the end of the day, he makes the mid-range jumper. And then he had the massive dig that you were talking about, forcing the turnover. And he was disruptive all game long in this game. And here's the other thing I want to point out. I think it's fair to bring up the missed free throw. I think it's fair to bring up turnovers because we're evaluating him at an MVP level. Wes put it up on the screen that, he's in the MVP conversation. I don't know that I fully agree with that, but he's definitely in the next tier after the Lukas and the Jokic and the SGA. And that's why I say first team All NBA conversation is what I would say. And so when you are that guy, you get talked about in terms of a 7 turnover game, an 8 turnover game, a missed free throw. But what we cannot lose sight of, Omari, is everything runs through him. Everybody wants to give Dennis Jenkins love, but here's the thing. Dennis Jenkins only got that opportunity because Miami felt the need to put 2 on the ball with Cade Cunningham. And Asar had an opportunity the possession before that he just didn't take advantage of. Everything offensively is created and starts with Cade Cunningham, and that's a huge burden to bear game in and game out, and he's carrying it impressively well, in my opinion.
Yeah, and even the minutes. I mean, he played 38 last night, and then he played 40 the night before that, and that's on a back-to-back. So I mean, I agree. You look at just the load he's carrying right now and what he's been able to do in spite of that. And okay, the free throw is one thing. I think that's also why you give him leeway in some areas, just because you think about guys like James Harden, like some of the other high usage guards, like they tend to be a bit more turnover prone, especially when they're asked to carry a big scoring load as well. But you're right also in that he's on the MVP tier, and the marginal stuff is what matters. If you make that free throw, then you're potentially looking at a 14-game winning streak. We don't have to relitigate everything they missed out on with that, but that's where he's at right now. It's about that marginal stuff that I think separates over the course of a season a 50-win team from a 55-win team to 60 and above.
Yeah, I mean, Downtown Deuce brings it up, and his commitment to defense has been underrated. I agree. I think that he is – I've brought it up before on this podcast. I think when you put him in the names that you're mentioning, he is a good defender. When you talk about primary initiators of offense, I don't know how many guys are better defensively than what Cade Cunningham is. There's probably a few out there, like SGA stars in his role defensively in Oklahoma City, but that role is, I don't want to say it's simple, but he's never having to take the primary matchups because they have Lou Dort and Cason Wallace and Alex Caruso and Jalen Williams now. There's and Cade doesn't have to all the time either, but I think it's always important to point that out. You mentioned the minutes, so I looked it up here. 5th in the NBA in minutes per game. The 2 Sixers backcourt guys, Keegan Murray is up there. He's only played 5 games. And then Luka, Austin Reeves, Amin Thompson, Şengün. But top 5, number 5 in minutes per game right now for Cade Cunningham. And yeah, Giannis is obviously the standard, right, for the defensive aspect, as YouTube user brings up his name. But Cade carrying the load offensively with what he brings on the defensive end in the minutes he's playing. I just don't know what else you would want from the face of the franchise outside, of course. I think it's always fair to bring up the little minutia turnovers, a missed free throw, things like that. Again, we don't always lead the episode with him, and I think it was important that we did because he's been incredible. Also, I've seen some new people in the chat, which is awesome. Love having you guys here. Guys, throw things in the chat. Wes will highlight them. We'll get to them at the end unless they come up, during the conversation and are relevant there. But definitely appreciate you guys being here. And obviously our normal cast that is always here. We love you guys as well. Isaiah Stewart had an impressive game in this one. Dennis Jenkins, as I mentioned, Paul Reed. I thought Ron Holland played well. Which one of those guys, O2, do you want to go to from this game against Miami specifically?
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Dennis, because we did mention, obviously, the shot he hit to help close that one out last night. And as you mentioned, he got that shot because they put 2 on Cade, and he had a wide open lane, and he just went and took it. But I think even just in those minutes Dennis played, and he did end up playing most of the fourth quarter, and that was his first time playing, I think, double-digit minutes in maybe 4 games, essentially, since Ivy came back. It's just having any type of dynamic point guard or guard in general next to Cade who can make those quick reads. Like, if if Dennis doesn't do that, like I don't know if they win that game. I think it just showed the importance of having a guy with that toolkit. Just to take whatever little bit of pressure you can off of Cade in those moments, because like you said, teams are just going to put two on him. We've seen, how teams blitz him all game. That's not going to change. But back on the topic of Dennis, he came in, he was ready. Obviously, he had an incredible stretch a couple weeks ago, and his role kind of fell off a bit once Ivy came back. But I thought, just in the limited time he played last night, he picked up right where he left off. And again, for a guy that's on a two-way contract, he really hasn't had a bad game. I feel like when he's been given a legitimate opportunity.
Here's what was impressive to me with Jenkins was he came in not cold. He had obviously played in that game, but I don't think he was planning on playing those clutch minutes at the end. And the very possession before, Asar Thompson had bobbled the pass, almost the exact same situation, and Asar turned it over. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Asar right now or whatever. We'll talk about him later. I do think that the offense has been clunky at times this year. Earlier in the half in this game, he actually had scored the ball really well, but wasn't able to convert. The fact that JB put Jenkins in the game, and then specifically in the situation, they knew what Miami was going to do, Omari. They knew that they were going to put two on the ball. They specifically put Dennis in that situation, threw him the ball, and trusted him to make the right decision, and he came through. And then he did go 1 of 2 from the free throw line a little bit later, but then finished off going 2 for 2 after Tyler Hero had gone 2 for 2. And then I also want to point out, he didn't necessarily start the game well. He dribbled the ball off his foot, I think the first possession, and then had what I would call a 0% chance field goal attempt a little bit later. So this is all positive to me. Like the fact that it wasn't picture perfect for him, and then he still was not only trusted, but came through in a clutch situation. That's huge for a guy like Dennis Jenkins.
Yeah, I mean, and in the clutch too. I mean, how many clutch shots has he had just in the last few weeks? Again, still in the grand scheme, not playing huge, heavy minutes. And even when he's been on the floor in those moments, not necessarily being the guy that, defenses are accounting for, but even his teammates are accounting for at times. So, yeah, I think and this gets into Paul Reed too. I also want to give him props for the way he stepped up. But it just seems like when Dennis is in there, like he could stack winning play after winning play, and he can make those decisions. And it almost reminds me of what they got from Schroeder last year a little bit, right? Like, Cade's going to get the attention, so you just put a really well-rounded, multifaceted guard next to him who can make those types of decisions, and then you become really hard to guard. Dennis, I think, has shown through the first month of the season that he can occupy that type of role for this team.
Okay, I'm glad this got brought up from Dogs in the Cut. Dennis Jenkins is a Trajan Langdon two-way undrafted free agent find that Troy Weaver never had. I misspoke a couple episodes ago. And you guys know, I carry my own receipts. I admit, for some reason, I knew that Dennis was in his second year. For some reason, I was thinking this was Trajan's first year on the job. I misspoke. So nobody actually called me out. I'm a little bit surprised, but we were talking about Dennis and somebody else, and I somehow, for some reason, got convoluted with the years and tried to give Trajan credit give Troy credit and not give Trajan credit. And I'm glad that this got brought up, because obviously Dennis Jenkins is a Trajan find in his first year as an undrafted free agent. Paul Reed, man, you started talking about him a little bit. Having that guy as a third center is huge. It's so important to have a guy that can come in and be productive the way that he was in this game. No Jalen Duren. Isaiah Stewart gets a start. I thought Stu played well. We've seen him really kind of figure out his left-hand finishing. But then Paul Reed off the bench in 19 minutes gets 13 points, 10 rebounds, 4 offensive boards, had a big one where he gets a second attempt for Duncan Robinson. Duncan knocks it down. He's able to finish with his left hand. I just think these are those kind of ways you round out a roster that can sometimes go underappreciated, but has absolutely contributed to this 16-4 start.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Reed is an overqualified third center, and he comes in, and if I have to guess off the top of my head, I would have guessed he played more than 19 minutes last night. And that's just the type of player he is. You notice every minute he's out on the floor because he's always doing something. Almost all of it is good. Almost all of it is disruptive against the other team. And he's the plus minus king. That's what he wants to do when he comes in. He wants to stack up the highest plus minus he can in however many minutes he plays. And yeah, he makes winning plays. I think he makes an impact on offense, defense. I think he surprises you with some of the offensive plays he creates sometimes. Like he'll even knock down the occasional three. It's just a lot for defenses to account for. He's got like Tasmanian devil energy. Like he just never quits the entire time he's out there. He's been huge. I think we've seen over the years how just having that lack of a reliable third center has hurt this team because, I mean, you're just always going to need your third center to, play big minutes at some point, whether it's foul trouble or injury or whatever it may be. And like this team's not 16-4 without Paul Reed. Not even close. He's been one of their most important players this season.
He's played 193 minutes through 20 games of the Pistons season. He hasn't played in all 20. You just multiply that by 4, and we're looking at 800 minutes. And that's without like a major injury so far to Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart. When I say, major injury, I mean like an ankle sprain that keeps them out for 3 weeks or, they miss. And hopefully that doesn't happen. But this is the kind of guy that just gives you quality minutes in the regular season, especially. And to your point, he is, the on-off has him as a positive almost 5 per 100 possessions. Now, I don't always buy into those numbers because those numbers essentially say Isaiah Stewart's the worst player on the Pistons, and I don't know that anybody would subscribe to that. But usually a good plus minus for Paul Reed and usually creating a bunch of stocks. Steals and blocks for Ron Holland actually has passed Paul Reed in steals per 100 possessions, and Isaiah Stewart is above him in blocks per 100 possessions, but Paul Reed is second in both of those with 6.7 stocks per 100 possessions. I saw it here, and I think it's probably time to do it. I actually do have a take on it. YouTube user says time to transition to the dreaded or amazing rotation topic. And we will get into that right after the short break.
All right, we are back with segment 2, and we're going to get into the rotation. We have about a week of the 11 to 12 man rotation experiment. I think obviously the results of that have been mixed. Some of that's because you're introducing a player back to the rotation in Jaden Ivey, who hasn't played regular season basketball in 11 months, and he's still getting his legs back under him. But there's been some, I would say, almost rotational awkwardness this past week that's interfered with their ability to put together a full 48 minutes. Bryce, just what's your grand overview of just how the first few games of this experiment have gone?
Okay, I'm going to read verbatim what I put on the Substack, and I want to get your thoughts, Omari.
Yeah.
So there was a 10-man rotation against the Heat because no Jalen Duren, no Karis LeVert. And I just thought that it seemed like there was better flow and it kept guys in rhythm. And I realized it's because those two guys are out. So here's my thing is, I think you have 12 guys that can play, and we haven't even talked about Marcus Sasser yet. I think something has to happen to really integrate Marcus Sasser. Love Sasser. He's come on the pod. Appreciate him for that so much. All of that. My thought here is with the 12 guys we've seen play so far is 2 guys just don't play in a given game, Omari. This would be my going into a game. You have a 10-man rotation. 2 guys simply don't play either due to injury, maybe a designated rest for somebody. I think Tobias Harris could use that every once in a while. I think Isaiah Stewart could use that every once in a while. The only one you have to worry about is Cade because there would be some restrictions on that from the NBA because of him being an all-NBA player. Jaden Ivey's coming off. Karis LeVert's a little bit older. All sorts of reasons you could designate rest for guys or just simply coach's decision. For me, and I'd be interested to see what your 10-man rotation would be, if all 12 were healthy and active, I would not play Javonte Green or Paul Reed. I would play the other 10 guys in a rotation. I think you have to be a little bit creative because that could be small with all of Jenkins, Ivey, LeVert, and Holland off the bench. But that is my thoughts on it, O2. What are your thoughts on the rotation?
Yeah, I agree that I think the 10-man rotation against Miami felt more fluid. I think when you have multiple guys who are playing, 5 to 7 minutes, it can just get a bit awkward to, maintain continuity, between lineups and line shifts and whatever it may be. And, as far as your takeaway, like who are those two guys who get flexed out? I think by process of elimination, it's you can't have all of Ivy, Green, and Jenkins, right? I think that Jenkins, the way he's played, especially last night, this team just needs that second point guard type who can make plays, knock down timely shots, like move the ball, and he's not bad defensively either. I think that's just tough to flex out of this group based on what they've struggled with, which I think is half court creation when they're not getting those, fast break points. And we'll come back to that when I know we have some questions about Ron and Asar as well, but I think you have to play Dennis. Can you play three bigs every night? Probably not. And you can mitigate that by playing beef stew at the 4 a little bit, but then obviously that takes minutes away from Ron and Asar. That's bias. And the way Tobias is, playing offensively these last few games, shooting. I just don't think you could do that. So, yeah, ultimately, it's a good problem to have. That you have guys like P. Reed and Javonte Green, who could come in and just really create that chaos. Especially defensively, that I think you need your bench guys to come in with. But just from a math standpoint, essentially, like you need this much shooting, this and that. Those are probably the guys that you end up flexing out.
The comment here, regular season 12-man rotation is good for now. Need to see what we have before the trade deadline. I don't disagree with that, but I don't think within a game, I personally, Omari, haven't liked the flow of the 12-man rotation and what it means for guys and how long they're on the court. And then when they sub out, I mean, even just, I think the center rotation is the easiest way to look at it. We just gave Paul Reed all of the praise and love that he deserves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't necessarily love whenever they've tried to play all three of those guys at center in a game. I mean, a week ago, everybody was saying Jalen Duren was the number 2 option in an all-star. You're only going to play that guy 24 minutes, Omari? Because, how are you going to get him the minutes? And we're only going to play Isaiah Stewart, who is one of the best defenders in the NBA. We're only going to play him 15. And then now we get 9 minutes for Paul Reed. Is that even fair to Paul Reed to only let him play? It was frustrating for me. Dennis would get 5 or 6 minutes, it seemed like, in the first half, and then not even get to play the second half some of those games. So to me, I just thought the rotations were wonky. And this is assuming no foul trouble within a game and all of that. So, I mean, here's the other thing, Michael. He says to defend JB, I think Reed played for Stu because of foul trouble. There was a game like that. I'm not questioning JB here. I understand I'm playing 2K substitutions and rotations right now where I don't have to see these guys in the locker room and deal with personalities and happiness and vibes and all of that. I fully understand that. And I'm not blaming JB for trying to keep all of these guys in the rotation thus far. I think JB is coach of the year right now. And I will argue with Sam, I think he's not going to have JB as coach of the year on Thursday, and I will debate that with him. I just think for me, as an outsider, that is what I would do. So let me ask you, my 10-man would be this current starting lineup, and then I would find a way to stagger in Jenkins, Ivy, Ron, Karras, and Isaiah Stewart. Would that be your 10 if I told you everybody's healthy, you have to have only a 10-man rotation?
I think so. At the end of the day, you've just got to have enough guys in the rotation who can knock down shots. So you have to have Ivy. And obviously you have organizational reasons to give Ivy as much of a runway as possible. Let him get his legs back under him regardless. Karras, I think there's been nights where they just couldn't get a bucket and he comes in and he, self-creates a couple threes and they kind of open things up. That's been extremely important. Ron, Asar, obviously need both of those guys. So I would agree with that 7-man rotation. I think just based on how the roster's set up, that probably checks as many boxes as you can.
Okay, I think that's enough on the rotation conversation for now, because at the end of the day, if guys are unhealthy and missing time, it's not going to end up mattering anyway. And as you said, it's ultimately a good problem to have. I did see somebody ask about Sasser. Did he get assigned? Did I miss that today? That he got assigned?
So he got assigned to the Motor City Cruise, and like that just means he's going to start scrimmaging, and he's probably within a week or two of getting back. Like that's always like the second to last step before a player is fully back. So obviously a good sign for him. He's had the hip injury that's kept him out of the entire regular season and most of preseason as well. I know he played at least one preseason game. I don't know if he played more than that. So that's also going to add to the rotation piece here because Sasser's a rotation player, and on this team that needs shooting, that's probably something you can't completely overlook.
So let's go to the other two games this past week. We got we got 10 minutes here, and then we'll get into some of your questions. We'll start with the Celtics game. Here's one thing I do want to say, Omari. I realize they dropped two games. They dropped two games by a total of 6 points in that stretch after winning, 13 in a row. And they lost to a Celtics team that is like 500 right now.
And also knocked down 23s. I mean,
yeah. And so we're going to get into all of that. And then they lost to an Orlando team that I just did the numbers has been awesome without, since the Paolo Banchero, Desmond Baines figure. And we're going to get into all the nuances and minutia of it. I just wanted to point that out. It's not like they lost to the Wizards and the Nets, by 20 or something. They lost to two very quality teams. I don't want to say they're awesome teams. Boston was on the road, obviously Orlando at home. But starting with the Boston game, you mentioned the three-point shooting. This is a team in Detroit that is still at this point 28th in three-point attempt rate. Duncan Robinson and Cade are, taking a lot of the threes for this team. Boston got hot. I have my thoughts on the matchups. I know we had that question, but, just thoughts on that Boston game. I think maybe the biggest thing, Wes put it in the outline, is I thought that was a game that Duren might destroy the matchup. He did have 16 rebounds, but only 12 points in that game.
Yeah, the Pistons just didn't have great offensive synergy in that game, and they also didn't have the urgency you need, from three to slow them down. And granted, I think the way that they defended the 3-point line would be fine against some teams, but it's not fine against a Boston team that is really just playing the bath, and just trying to knock down as many as they can. Because they know they can't compete with you in other areas, especially when it comes to their overall lack of size. And to your point, you probably would have expected Duren to get a bit more going in that game. But the Pistons just couldn't really establish a rhythm, especially the second half. I thought they really leaned on Cade to kind of self-create and get a lot of his own shots. And yeah, long story short, when a team knocks on 23-pointers against you and you're not a team that takes a lot of threes, that's just not probably going to go into your favor if you're not getting up on the 3-point line like you need to be. And even with all that, it literally came down to the last free throw, which Cade just happened to miss. But tough loss, not the type of loss that makes you worry about anything long term. I think you come away from that one thinking, they've got to figure out something with their rotations to just get a bit more fluidity in there. I think the second unit especially is highly dependent on forcing turnovers and just kind of creating that chaos to overcome some of their spacing issues. And when that's not happening and, you keep having to inbound the ball because the other team's knocking out threes on you, I think it just kind of neutralizes that lineup. So, it's fixable stuff. It's stuff that hypothetically, certain players get going, you do this or that, maybe you have a different outcome. But that was just sort of a game script game. The script went against them, and they just couldn't solve it.
Well, and the other thing is that's just the way Boston plays, and you alluded to some of that. The 3-point shooting difference there, just in terms of what was the total attempts in that?
It was like 43. They were like 20 for 43, I think.
Yeah. So Detroit was 11 of 36. And 20. So they didn't shoot a crazy amount more. They just made a whole bunch more. The other thing is Detroit is one of the most disruptive defensive teams in the NBA. They're third in turnover percentage defensively in terms of forcing turnovers. And Boston is one of the best in the NBA. So just those things right there where Detroit was gonna lose the 3-point battle unless, they just shot bad for Boston. And they didn't. I wonder how many total shots Detroit shot. 93 with 36 free throws. Gosh, they talk a ton of free throws. So Boston somehow lost the possession battle. Seemed like Detroit gave up a bunch of offensive rebounds in that game, but I guess it was only Detroit had 21 of their own. So it was balanced out because of Detroit's offensive rebounding. The other thing I noted defensively is Detroit is actually middle of the road defensive rebounding. And we saw this show up in the Orlando game as well, right? Where at the end of the Orlando game, they went from a minute 4 to like, what was it, 6 seconds or something? Like something crazy.
And just couldn't get the ball.
They couldn't get the defense. So it's something to watch for against very good offensive rebounding teams. That Detroit can give that stuff up. And so just in general, Boston's match, like, yes, I'm not trying to be negative here. I feel like some people feel like it's coming off that way, but I also thought Detroit let them get in a rhythm. Derek White just got in a rhythm. Then the defense got a little bit better and it was just too late. And they did make a ton of shots. I do want to quickly talk about the Asar on Peyton Pritchard versus Jaylen Brown decision. That was one just like little nuanced matchup thing that I don't know that I agreed with from the coaching staff. I really thought that was a game for Asar to be on. This is one of those moments. I've said this multiple times on the pod, Omari. I would love to be able just to ask the coaching staff or be in the room around the discussion of why Asar on Pritchard and not on Jaylen Brown. I will say Asar gave Peyton Pritchard's fits at times and caused some real disruption. But I did think that I was surprised by that decision.
Yeah, I kind of understand it from the standpoint of after Pritchard, they don't have a lot of like really, really capable ball handling. So you neutralize that, and then maybe you start to win the turnover game. But I think with that, when you have guys who have a size advantage, like I would put Cade on Peyton Pritchard, early on, and like I think I would feel fine with that. I mean, he's just so much bigger. Some of those battles are going to go in his favor naturally. You just don't want him to foul, obviously. But yeah, Asar, you probably want Asar on a guy who's been one of the best scorers in the NBA. I don't think that's why they lost the game. I understand, just kind of cutting off the head of the snake a bit and putting pressure on their other guys to handle the ball and make plays. But in the end, I don't know if it really worked in their favor.
Yeah, Wes says he thinks they love having Asar do the one-man press and just make life hard for the primary initiative, which, listen, not a bad strategy because Asar is really good at that. And as Michael says, Boston just beat Cleveland on the road. This is on Sunday night, obviously, so it wasn't that bad of a loss.
It's not a bad team.
I don't think it was a bad loss at all. Like, maybe I didn't emphasize this enough at the top. My whole point talking about these two games is I don't think that they were bad. The team just won. Yeah, guys, maybe I didn't come across right. I feel like everybody in the comments is I said it at the top. They lost 2 games by 3. This one on the road. I don't think Boston is a great team, and especially their front court. Like, I think that if I had an actual disappointment, Omari, it's that they didn't dominate the front court maybe as much as what they could. Now, with that said, I just said they got like 20 plus offensive rebounds. So obviously they dominated in some capacity. I don't think it was a bad loss. If it sounds that way, I did not mean for it to. Any big takeaways from the Orlando game? Another game where an opposing team's player like really went crazy. Desmond Bane with a huge game. Anything else about that one that kind of stood out?
Yeah, that game was interesting because Orlando did not shoot the ball well. They were 41% overall. They were 5 of 30 from 3, which is 16.7%. So defensively, like the Pistons were fine. Desmond Bane got going. I mean, like every Orlando Pistons game is. I mean, it kind of got bucked up, but I feel like as far as that, it kind of played in the Pistons' favor. The Pistons' problem was that they just couldn't get buckets when they needed them for most of the night, and then on top of that, they had 24 turnovers. So, I thought some of the offensive miscues they had against Boston kind of carried over. I think they were scoreless for like the first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter or something like that, and they were only outscored 6-1 in that stretch, but it's like Cade sat and like the offense just completely cratered. I mean, they couldn't get anything going at all. Couldn't really move the ball, and then they made a push late, 10-0 run, and they kind of just fell short. And obviously, like we talked about earlier, they couldn't get a rebound on that last possession. But
oh my God.
yeah, which they were taking threes, and some of those rebounds were long, but still you can't give up 4 on the last possession. But again, like the issues that they had in that game, I think are fixable issues. Just need some fine tuning, I think, for some rotational stuff. Defensively, I mean, I think most nights you hold a team, but 5 for 30 from 3, you're probably gonna have a good chance at winning. So that was just a weird game, I think, for me to watch. But it really came down over the course of the game to maybe 2 or 3 or 4 plays where they just couldn't get a bucket when they needed one.
Who was covering Bane? I know Robinson started the game on him, which I was shocked that was like, but there's so much switching that it's, it goes to different people. That just looking back through my notes. The other thing from this game is, again, just kind of talking about the Pistons defense. Orlando is, I think I have them at number 1 in the NBA in free throw attempts per field goal attempt or whatever, and Detroit is last in that on the defensive end. So I do think, again, 2 3-point losses, and you played teams that kind of are good offensively at what you aren't, or I guess in one case, something you aren't good at in the free throw thing with Orlando. And then in the Boston game, a team that's really good taking care of the ball. So maybe you didn't cause as much disruption and get into transition as much. I think a couple takeaways for me, where was the comment about, just not getting into the cup. Like I think it would have been fun. We've seen this back-to-back years now. They went into Milwaukee last year with a chance to make the actual in-season tournament field or whatever you want to call it, and they weren't able to win that game. And then we saw it again this year. I just think it would have been cool to see them in that environment in those games. And then the other thing is, haven't had a chance to complain about this yet, the broadcasts have to stop missing live action for replays. It happened multiple times in this game, and it drives me absolutely crazy, Omari. I don't need to see people in the stands. I don't need to see Paul or Franz and Mo sitting next to each other on the bench. I don't need to see the previous play. I can rewatch it later. Just give me the live action. I'll shut up about it now, but that drives me crazy.
No, it's annoying. It's like they just start daydreaming and get distracted by other stuff. It's like basketball moves way too fast, for you to do that as frequently as you do it. Like, yeah, it happens a lot. You probably watch the broadcast, it's 2 or 3 plays a game, just because the camera wasn't paying attention. Okay.
All right, let's go to break. When we come back, we will talk about some of the upcoming matchups and games, as well as get to some of the questions from the chat. We will start off talking about Hawks, Bucks, Blazers, Bucks, and the next 4 games for Detroit right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 3. They have the Hawks tomorrow, December 1st at home. They have the Bucks on the road on the 3rd. And then they have a home back-to-back, Blazers Friday and Bucks Saturday. So you've got 3 games against some pretty good Eastern Conference teams. Blazers have been more down than up as of late, but overall, I think this is another week that'll test their mettle a little bit. You finally broke that streak against Milwaukee the other week, but now you got to beat them twice in a 3-game stretch. And Atlanta's been good too. Pistons beat them, obviously, but they had also beat Orlando and Boston before those teams got revenge of them last week. Just what's your overall view of this week, Bryce?
Yeah, it's going to be a great test because, as you mentioned, Atlanta's been playing well even without Trae Young. Jalen Johnson is a monster. Looks like a potential all-star for them. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I've always loved his game, has been playing well. And then you have 2 games against the Bucks. Giannis is back at time of recording. And so obviously that provides just a different level of opponent whenever he's in the lineup. And then even the Blazers, like, Denny Avdija. So I always go into these games, and we just talked about it with Asar. I assume Asar will take the Jalen Johnson matchup, or I guess I hope he will, at least for me, because I think it would be a lot of fun to watch that. In that Portland game, Denny Avdia, Asar taking that matchup will be awesome. And then it's always interesting to see what JB and his staff will decide in terms of who's going to take the Giannis matchup and what will the success of that look like. So I'm excited for these next 4 games. Selfishly, it works out well for me. I'm going to the Chiefs game on Sunday night, watch the official funeral of the 2025-2026 Kansas City Chiefs season live and in person. But the nice thing is, based on the Pistons schedule, I may be a little bit late watching the Bucks game, but it's not like they play, I'll be on the road Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's not like they play 2 of those 3 days or whatever. So I won't get too backed up because they have 4 or 5 days off after that home and home or that home back-to-back, I assume because of the NBA Cup schedule or something like that. So they get a little bit of time off there.
Yeah. So they play, they have a game on the 12th and then they have a game, I believe, on the 15th. So I want to say the Hawks come here on the 12th and then, and then they go to Boston on the 15th. So a lot of good Eastern Conference matchups coming up for them. The Eastern Conference also is kind of sneaky, 1 through 10, not bad this season. I think this might be the first year in a while that 1 through 10 in the East is stronger than 1 through 10 in the West. It gets bad for the West after 8.
So our friend Tim Bontemps, if you guys didn't listen to that episode, go listen. I think people always, at the very least, you will appreciate the national perspective from someone who, isn't, obviously he's not following them day in and day out, but I think the differing perspectives is always good. Some people may say he's negative or whatever, but I think it's always interesting to listen to. He's made the point on their podcast, the Hoop Collective, which is a very good podcast I listen to. I think you guys should as well, that, if you're middle of the pack, you would actually rather be in the West than the East. If you think you're going to be in the play-in, the West is actually a little bit more of is Portland good? Is Memphis good? Who even wants to be the 10 seed in the West? Where in the East, it's a little bit different. Now, if you want to be at the top, obviously it's a little bit different in the West with, starting with Oklahoma City. But yeah, 9-10 Bulls, the 9-12 Bucks, and I think the Bucks are 9-12 because of, Giannis missing games, but it's a little bit better. And a lot of that has to do with Detroit being 16-4. And then the Toronto Raptors, have also been good at 14-7. So anything else you're looking forward to? Any other storylines here moving forward before we get into a few of these questions?
It's just from here on out, it's just to what extent could the Pistons sustain the start they've been on, right? Teams are going to go through ebbs and flows over the course of the season, and they don't really have, I don't think there's any easy, that's not the right word, but they're going to be tested every night here, it seems like for a bit, because even a team like Portland, could get hot. Denny Avdia is a really good player. So, this next week, I think is really going to test their ability to, shake off some of these poor finishes they've had and see if they can string another streak together.
All right, we're going to finish off here with some questions from the chat. We have a few starred from earlier in the episode. If you have anything you want to ask, Pistons, NBA draft, life, whatever you want, now is your time to do so. We're open here for another 10, 15 minutes to finish off. We talked about this a little bit, but I know this person has been in the chat a lot here live, and we appreciate the support. Pistons fan 11 says, as our best athlete, Asar Thompson best used guarding Peyton Pritchard, Franz Wagner, or other team's star scorer and perimeter athlete like Jaylen Brown or Desmond Bane? I will just say in general, and again, we talked about this a little bit, going into a game, I'm always going to feel more comfortable if Asar Thompson is taking the matchup of the other teams, what I would call the hub of their offense, the most important offensive player for that team. In Orlando, I do think that is Franz. I think I know Desmond Bane went crazy, but I think it's Franz. For Boston, that would be Jaylen Brown. Atlanta, it'd be Jalen Johnson. Portland, it's Avdia. Milwaukee, obviously, it's Giannis. I don't know that he can take the Giannis matchup. So anytime you can get Asar on the other teams, what I would call best player, if it's not just if it's a matchup he can take, it's not Jokic or Giannis or someone like that, that's who I would want on it. And here's the other thing. I think Ron Holland's been pretty good defensively. We haven't talked about him a lot in this episode. I know the offense has been, up and down and went through a pretty rough stretch. I thought he had a good game on Saturday. I do think Ron has been good on the defensive end, too.
Yeah, he has been. Just the energy he plays with on that end and the way he gets right up into guys. I think he had 3 steals against Miami. His steals numbers have actually been really, strong all season. He's another guy. He comes off of the bench and like when he's forcing turnovers and getting up into guys like that. I think that's what really fuels his overall game. But what the question? Just
like who do you think he should be on? So we can go to the next one. Agrodome says, where do we sit about acquiring another 3-point shooter to continue to take the pressure off Cade? Will this be a priority for Trajan Langdon going to the February deadline? I will just say quickly, I think some of this depends on where Jaden Ivey ends up settling in as a 3-point shooter. But in general, I do think, listen, we just recorded Game Theory. I brought up Duncan Robinson as an underrated kind of, I don't remember how I call it, but somebody underrated for a top 6 team success. Other names were like Jamal Shed and Mamu Kelishvili for the Raptors, stuff like that. Like we were talking about underappreciated guys that are helping their teams win. Duncan Robinson is vital to this team offensively. I understand he gets hunted defensively. Like I get it. And my push is then they got to start hard hedging it and not switching it. I just think it's hard to not have him on the floor for a lot of minutes. And I think the fact he's played 20 games this year for this team and has made shots the way he has is vital. And so my point is, yes, Trajan should, even if it's a small move, another shooter, ideally one that can play defense, would be huge.
Yeah. I said before the season, I wouldn't be surprising if Duncan's like sneakily like top 3 minutes played on this team by the end of the year, just because of how vital his shooting's going to be. Every now and then during a game, when Duncan's not hitting a couple shots, people in the benches will say, Duncan can't be out there if he's not hitting shots. They're hunting him, this and that. And it's like, no, I mean, he's got to be out there because no one else on the team has that gravity he brings as a shooter. And like, there have been nights where they can't get anything going and then he knocks down a 3 and then that just opened things up. That's what happened against Orlando. I think it was Duncan. I hit a 3 around 7 minutes into the 4th. And then, from there, the Pistons went on a 10-0 run and kind of got back in it after they were down 10. To me, this still strikes me as a team that could use another knockdown shooter. I think some of the issues they've had offensively, it's not just that the rotation's been bigger, it's that the rotation is including more guys that can't shoot, and if you're playing 12 guys and only a handful of those guys are like, true perimeter threats, I just think it becomes tougher to put viable lineups on the floor for all 48 minutes. So what that other shooter looks like, I don't know exactly how you go about that at this point, but there's one area of weakness for the offense. Like you mentioned, Bryce, they're still 28th in attempts. I know in percentage, they're not that high either. That's clearly one area that they could get better in.
Michael asks, do you think the decision might be Ivy versus Sarr for the starting lineup? They don't seem to be playing both of them with Duren. I would say no. I still think the decision is going to be Ivy versus Robinson. And that's, like we just talked about, if Ivy shows that ability to knock down 3-pointers at a good enough clip that, he's respected and provides gravity and all of that, I would not want to take a Sarr out of the starting lineup for the defensive purposes. And J.I. just isn't that good defensively right now.
Yeah. If J.I.'s knocking out shots, then yeah, he probably is in that Robinson category.
He could take Robinson's spot, but I don't think he can go in for a Sarr.
But I don't think he can go in for a Sarr.
Defensively, you're in a lot of trouble there, I feel like.
Yeah, like a Sarr's defense is just too pivotal, I think, to the starting lineup and just for this team overall. You can't have a Sarr and Isaiah Stewart coming off of the bench. I think one of those guys has to start if you want to have any hope of setting a tone defensively to lead off the game.
Fly Monk 321. How does the lineup end up shaking out? Dennis Jenkins needs minutes, but from where? We won't fully rehash this, but we did talk about it throughout the middle portion of the episode. I think both Omari and I ended up that if we had a 10-man rotation, Dennis Jenkins would be in it. Again, I realize that could be a little bit small. You would have to stagger guys into spots, but I do think it would be, plausible to do that. Dogs in the Cut says, is OKC going to lose again this year? Yes, but I think 72, 73 wins is in play if Shea stays healthy. He's about the only dude in that rotation that they can't afford to lose. I mean, they won all these games, and Jalen Williams just played the other night. I think they have enough size and big man rotation to, even if Chet missed some times, like they have enough defenders that if Lou Dort or somebody random missed time, they have other defenders. I think 70 wins is truly in play for this team, Omari.
Yeah, I mean, they're dominant. They're off to one of the best starts ever. There's only a handful of teams, I think could really put the fear in them on any given night. So, dog season, we'll see if they sustain it. But, they've had as dominant a start as any dominant team in NBA history.
Victor Padilla essentially asked about Jaden Ivey. Do you feel like there is a minutes restriction right now, like an official one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they, were like just hard, like he has to play, this many minutes or fewer, but yeah, he's not at a 4-minute load right now. I'm about to check real quick. I don't know if he's cracked 15 minutes.
He's averaging 13 per game.
Yeah. He played
15 against Boston.
Yeah, he played actually in his debut he played 15 against Milwaukee, and he's basically been between 10 and 15 every night. So I could see that eventually being ticked up as he gets more comfortable. That's kind of how we saw them handle Asar last year when he came back from the blood clots. He came in not playing a big minute load, and then they just gradually progressed it up. So we'll see what that looks like for JI going forward. But I don't think he's going to average 15 minutes a game for the season. I think obviously that's going to go up.
Is Edgecombe Rookie of the Year so far? My answer to this would be no. I will say this. He is the only rookie in consideration that is on a team with a winning record. They're at least 9-6 in his games. What is Philly overall right now? Yeah, they're 10-8. But it's not like they're just like blowing, it's not like they've just been unreal. I would say Knipple or Cooper Flag would be over him for me. So
yeah, Knipple has been insane. Like he's my number one on my list for sure. I think he's averaging like 19 or 20 points right now.
18 and a half. Yep.
Yeah, I mean he's just been balling. Cooper's been good too, but right now it's kind of Knipple.
Yeah. Cooper's coming around. Like he's had a game recently where, like he had 35 or something like that. And then he had a game with 10 assists and all that. I mean, VJ's thing, he got off to a crazy hot start. The interesting thing with Rookie of the Year is going to be, and this is going to really make Pistons fans mad, I feel like. I've been thinking about this. A lot of these guys aren't going to be on good teams, or teams with good records. And so I just wonder if that part of the conversation ends up just getting thrown to the side completely. Now we'll see how many games Dylan Harper ends up playing. It looks like the Spurs are going to win a lot. Memphis is figuring out a little bit, and Cedric Coward has been awesome for them. There have been some rookies, but a lot of them aren't necessarily winning a ton. But yeah, Khan has been awesome. And like I say, Cooper's figured out a little bit as well. Let's see here. A few more just to close it out. Is there a power forward out there other than Jaren or Lowry that the Pistons could get on the cheap? So I'm just going to look at standings here, and we can go through some of these rosters on terms of like any of these teams that might be selling a little bit. Omari, Pelicans. I mean, I don't think so. Clippers could be moving on from John Collins. That's a number that you would have to go meet. Sacramento doesn't have one. PJ Washington is not trade eligible in season for the Mavericks. I don't think Memphis has another one. I mean, I think the only guy Portland's probably trading is Jeremy Grant. That's another huge contract.
Yeah.
In the East.
I mean, I'm looking at Brooklyn. I don't know if you go for any of their power forwards.
No, Washington, like it's CJ's the best name there.
Yeah. I mean, Indiana doesn't have any bigs that you would go for.
No. I don't think there's a ton of names right now until we see how now listen, some of these other teams may fall off throughout the year, but yeah, Michael says, Sam's brought up Wiggins, but the thing with Wiggins is they're really good right now. So I don't know. I don't see why they would be in the market to move on from him right now. He actually said that tonight as we were talking about Wiggins for, I don't know, the Lakers or somebody like that. Yes, Santi Aldama is trade eligible January 15th, but they did just sign him. So, what was Dumars thinking when he traded away the pick? I will say this. Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen have looked very good offensively so far.
Derek Queen is hooping. I mean, Derek Queen is hooping. Say what you want about the value of the trade, but he looks like a home run at the 10th pick. So if you're going to make a trade like that, ideally you would want the guy that you traded for to look like a star. And he looks like, I see some Julius Randle just in the way he's able to maneuver around. But for how young he is, what he's doing, I can't wait to see what type of player he becomes.
Yeah, so somebody brought up Jalen Smith here from the Bulls. I mean, he just makes a lot of sense for what the Bulls do. He plays the 5 for them behind Vooch, and it just really works because he's able to keep the floor space in the same way Vooch does. But that could be interesting. Yeah. No, good episode, Omari. Appreciate the engagement from everybody in the chat. We thank you guys so much. I saw somebody earlier, I meant to tag it. Somebody said that they had watched Pistons Talk. I saw that they were live and they were talking about the rotation stuff as well. So seems like a topic of conversation. Make sure you're checking out all of the great Pistons content creators. Obviously, our guy Koo over on Locked On Pistons. Always mention Wes and Blake on Detroit Bad Boys, Pistons Talk. At Downtown Dude, like all of these people they're putting out great content. Like Detroit fans are so lucky with all the great podcasters, content creators, places they can go and get their Pistons coverage. But of course, we're a little bit biased here. So please keep it locked to Omari Sankofa II on the Detroit Free Press. Go subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack. Listening to Wes and Blake over on the Pin Down on Detroit Bad Boys. But that is it for tonight's episode. We will be back early next week sometime. It will not be on Sunday, maybe Monday at the earliest. But O2, take it away, my guy.
Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to Wes Davenport, as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.